Welcome to My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson, a journey into the deepest teachings of Torah and their application to our personal, emotional, and psychological lives.
A good Tavach, a good week. We continue our journey in the life-changing Sefer HaTanya. This program is made possible by Rena Lights LLC and is an honor and memory of Rabbi Yosef Halevi Weinberg Olav Hashalom, Rabbi Moshe Pinchas HaKohen Katz Olav Hashalom, and Rabbi Yael HaKohen Khan Olav Hashalom. It's also in Schus and merit of Rabbi Zev Yecheskel HaKohen and Risha Katz Le'erich Yomim B'Shanim Tevis for many long, healthy years. So we concluded chapter 20, Perek Chof in Tanya, but it's worthwhile going back and reviewing the chapter, especially in the context of what we learned before and what we'll be learning in the coming chapters. Essentially, from chapter 20 through chapter 25 is one entire section, which follows chapters 18 and 19. Let's explain. The whole point of Tanya, as the Alter Rebbe writes on his Sharblat, is to explain well, Levayed Hetiv, the Posuk, Korek ki korav elecha dover ma'ed beficha belvavcha la'asese. How this dover, Torah and mitzvahs, is korav elecha ma'ed, echu korav ma'ed, how it's very accessible, how it's very relevant. Because if that Posuk didn't exist, you'd say, okay, we have Torah and mitzvahs. Not that, God forbid, it's God's Torah and mitzvahs, and we have to absolutely do it. But you don't have the expression how relevant, how accessible, how much is it integrated into your life. Once Moshe Rabbeinu made that statement in Parashat Netzavim, Alter Rebbe feels the need to explain Eich. In other words, it's not just to follow orders and do Hashem's mitzvahs like a servant to a master. It's korav elecha, something that relates to you, accessible to you, very accessible, and not just in general, beficha belvavcha la'asese, as the Alter Rebbe explains in the earlier chapters. So up till chapter 18, till the end of chapter 17, he explained it through avodah, primarily. Meaning through the way we contemplate, and moyach shal ta'alev, our contemplation, our minds have control over our hearts, our emotions. So though we have an nefesh habamis, an animal soul, because we're talking about a beinani, sefer shel beinanim, midas kol adam v'acharev kol adam yimshach, that's something that all of us naturally have, and that's what we're drawn to. So though we have an nefesh habamis, but we have the capacity, we have the tools, natural tools, to contemplate and control. Like the controlling of a city with two kings, as he explains in chapter 9, the two malachim, the two kings that are fighting over control of a city. You can control the city. It doesn't mean you've eliminated the enemy, but you're in control. And what does control mean? In thought, speech, and action. So that's the midas sheneldu that are born from contemplation. And that itself, there are levels. There are those that can mamish give birth to passionate emotions of love and reverence of the divine. Though you can't do that, chapter 16 he explains, at least you can come to a point where your mind understands and your feelings, talumas libe, understand that it's worthy, that God is worthy of love, being loved, even though you can't fully have that full emotional experience. And then chapter 17 further explained how, even if a person is not on that full level, but at least la'asese, in order to bring it down to action, so it's enough, that value, that he feels the value, ye'osole, that it's worthy of loving God, at least brings him to action. So it's also a form of beficha bolvavcha la'asese, as it explains in chapter 17. But what about someone that doesn't have the contemplation altogether? Daitik tzara, to the point, he can't even contemplate at all. As he begins in the beginning of chapter 18. The exact language, let's read the language. What does he say? he says like this. Misha daitek sorry be ideas Hashem ein lev lahavim begdul sense baruch hu lehel men tchile rechim afilo b'meichev tfunase levad. Even meichev tfunase, which he explained is like talumas libe, that lower level of contemplation that brings at least that it's worthy. Afal pikein korev elecha adover mei lishmer lasis kol mitzvus atera ubulvove mamish mum kedlibe, because it's not just enough lasese, you need also belovavcha. Why? Lamite, because of the Ava Misuteres. So he introduces now the hidden love, the dormant love, a natural love that we have without any Aveda. Just like we're born with certain DNA. There's a DNA in our emotional, spiritual selves. It's called Ava Misuteres, which are Yerushalayim Aviseinu. As he continues to explain, the Chochmah Shebenefesh, like a flame, as he continues in chapter 19, that naturally is drawn and longs to connect to its source. Where do you see that? If it's dormant, you see it when they're challenged. When a person is challenged, push comes to shove, and their very amuna is put on the line. Even a Kal Shebekalim and Peishi Yisrael, even someone that is generally not a pious person, and you don't see their connection in a revealed way. But when their survival is at stake, it's life and death, they don't want to be disconnected. As we discussed at length in chapters 18, 19. So now you have another path to Korev Elecha Dover Meid. Obviously together with the path that he discussed earlier, and we explained why he began with the first one, with the Aveda, and not Ava Misuteres. So when you have both, obviously it's much stronger. But there's something that still remains. So that's fine, as long as you're talking about a challenge. What happens when you're not challenged? Obviously a parent, will do everything possible to save their child's life. But that's only when they see their child being threatened. Where do you see that when it's a regular routine day? Where do you see the Korev Elecha Lishmer Torah Mitzvos like we just read in the beginning of chapter 18? Where do you see that? So for this, the Alter Rebbe wants to go deeper into understanding our relationship with God. And this comes to it, you really start appreciating what Chassidus comes to contribute. The appreciation of Eined Milvade. Not just that there's nothing but God. Meaning, there's no reality like God's reality. God is the only one that's God. One God and not many. But there's no reality except God. Yes, he created an existence and definitely created the perception that we're independent consciousness, but in truth, it's all part of godliness. And he breaks this into two different chapters, chapter 20 and chapter 21. And we'll discuss that as well, the distinction between the two. But to begin, he says, so let's know this. Well, we talked about Avodah Zarah before, that a person, when he's challenged to bow to an idol, God forbid, he will never do that. Even a Kal Shebekalim and Peish Yisrael. The truth is, anything that's not godliness is a form of Avodah Zarah. It doesn't have to be an actual idol. When you understand the divine unity that permeates and saturates all of existence, is all-encompassing, and that there's a non-duality, then even one edge, one corner, one little detail is already a form of anti-godliness, antithetical to the divine. So when you understand that, then every Torah, every mitzvah, not just Avodah Zarah, every detail mitzvah, is really, when you do it, you're revealing the divine, the reality of existence. And when you don't do it, God forbid, you're revealing, you're defying and concealing the divine like a mini type of idolatry. Obviously, halachically, it doesn't have the same dinim of Yarek Vayaver, but conceptually. So this takes on a whole new way of looking at existence. It's not just we exist and we follow orders. He's coming to tell us especially with the word ma'id, that godliness is one with us. It's our work is to come to become aware of it. And part of becoming aware is understanding the themes that the Alter Rebbe explains. So chapter 20, he begins to explain Achdus Hashem, that to know that God's immutable. Unity, I should say, God's unity is immutable. Ani Hashem le'ishan yisi. There's actually no change at all. Atuhu mishanivre elam. Atuhu achle nivre elam. Atuhu mishanivre elam. Pirush, mamish b'li shinui. That there's absolutely no change. There's a world, but the world does not cause any change in him. Because it's completely tafel, completely kulikamei kalo chashiv. And that's when he goes into the example, because the world is created b'dvar Hashem, v'ruach piv. It's simply God's breath, is God's speech. And like one word, even by a human being, what's one word compared to all the capacity, the infinite amount of words that we could speak? And definitely compared to thought, which is not even in the world of speech. And definitely compared to the faculties of Etzem HaNefesh, like he said, the faculties, which are not even in the category of letters. Thought is not speech, but it's still letters. Eisis HaMachshava. But in the Nefesh, like he said, compared to the Nefesh, it's not even a levush. Muhuz v'atzmus HaNefesh, shehein eser b'chineseha hanal chabad, shemem nimshachu eisis machshava. So what is that one word compared to all of that? And he explains, and that's how he concludes the chapter, as we learned last week, because machshava at least has letters. It's already taken on some form of definition. But the eser b'chines, which is the root and source of the thought, they have no letters yet. And he gave an actual example, and let's discuss why he gives an example. Because when a person has some desire and lust for something, a love and desire, so before it goes from his heart to his mind to think about it, to contemplate on it, it doesn't have letters yet. It's just a seamless, shapeless desire, plain desire and fervor. And furthermore, there's even higher. Before it actually becomes a desire and a craving, it's just something that he's b'kayach chachmaseh v'sichle v'diyaseh. It's in his chachma, his intellect and mind. It's known by him, he's aware that this thing that is pleasant and desirable, but it's not yet become a full-fledged emotion within him. His mind understands that theoretically it's the right thing. All this is before there's any letters altogether. There's no definitions yet. It's just either desire or even pre-desire. It's only after the yearning and craving comes into his heart, and then it rises to his mind to think about it, how to ponder and contemplate, how to actualize and realize that desire. Then letters begin to form and be born, and those are the letters Kalshein Am Va'am. In each nation, each language, and their language, that speak and contemplate on all worldly things. So what is one word compared to these levels that we're talking about? Number one, the level, again, the infinite amount of speech that we could have. What's one word compared to infinite amount of words? Even more so to thought, even more so to the faculties that are beyond even the letters of thought, as he just explained. Why does he have to go into such detail and actually describe how it is by human beings that first we have a desire, and the desire is still shapeless? It's only, and especially pre-desire, where it's only a concept theoretical. And then from there comes a desire. The desire then goes to the mind and thinks of how to fulfill it, and that's when you start the machshava, that's when you start having letters. Why does he have to go through all these details? At the end of the day, it's a moshel. Because the Alter Rebbe wants to talk about things as they are in our existence. Remember, Korev Elecha, Hadover Me'ed. Elecha means you in your life. So he's actually using a real example in your life. That's why he concludes the chapter. So right now, as we are speaking right now, people are talking about all kinds of things out there. We're talking about even kosher things. We're not talking about anything that God forbid prohibited. In Yonei Elam. Those, and they feel it's important things to them. He's coming to say here, let's go back to the Nimshal, all those words that you're saying, even compared to your own nefesh, let alone, we're not even talking yet to the source, God, the creator of it all. The creator that created everything with words. Your words, where you're not creating. What are your words that you're speaking, calling Yonei Elam, compared to your infinite amount of speech, ability to speak? What is it compared to your thoughts, which are not even the world of speech, but it's still letters? What is it compared to your nefesh, that doesn't even have letters? Even pre-desire, even when it comes into a desire. And this is what you're involved in all day. So you see how far away, when we're focused on the here and now of the words we speak, and people are so consumed, all of that is completely nullified compared to you. How much more so compared to God? In addition to this being an example, because God created the world with words. So what are the words? What are those words? Those single words compared to the Eibishter's Koyach HaDibur, the Eibishter's Koyach Machshava, the Eibishter's Etzem. You could say the faculties, the Esesviris, from where the Koyachas come from. And definitely even higher, which he hasn't addressed here. Because here he's trying to explain that, like Chassidus explains, that even the Kalim, because the Kalim are like the Oisis, the Dibur. We're not talking about the Eir. The Eir's bittul is definitely even a higher level of bittul. But even the very Kalim, the things we talk about, B'chol Yonei Elam, and the same thing the Kalim, the Eibishter uses to create the instruments through speech, the Asarim Amoris Nivrei Elam, the 10 statements. All of that is completely nullified. Well, he said, Kalul Kamei Kalo Chashiv, compared to the Koyach HaDibur, like he said, the Machshava, and the nefesh, what he calls etzem nefesh, as he explained with the examples that he's given here. So what do you come away from this? Come away understanding to look at existence very differently. This is existence. The existence we see that we so value, all it is exactly that, not even a drop in the water. It's completely bottle and tuffle. Now, this is not meant to degrade and denigrate existence. It's meant to put it in true context. What is a true reality? True reality is the source, the creator. And the creator has not changed in any way from all of this because all of this is so inconsequential. Like, what does one word do to you? When you utter one word, does it change? Does it diminish your power to speak? No, you have you have a power to speak more and more. It doesn't matter if you spoke one word. Not to take away from the value of the word, but in context, it has no existence. It's existent. It's not an illusion, but an existence that has no existence compared to the true existence. So ultimately, this lays the ground, understanding this type of bittul of a divine consciousness that should be permeating everything we do. So when you're eating a meal, there's no avodah zarah. No one's telling you, God forbid, to eat something not kosher, or to eat something, or to behave or bow to an idol, or to say something that is directly against lo yeh lecha lekim acherim, or against Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the first 2 dibros in the 10 Commandments. You're eating a meal, but that meal is the divine, is an existence created by the divine, and that very second, it's being renewed, and doesn't have any value of its own. When you're aware of that, we're not aware of it perhaps because of the symptom, not perhaps, but if you're aware of that, then even the very meal, the one bite you take, it's all part of a divine reality. So yes, there's an existence, there's dibur, the Eibishter spoke. But what is that dibur? What is the existence? So even when you're talking about in Yonei Ha'elam, what's really behind it? Even with compared to you and your koiches, Your levushim will talk dibur, machshava, and the keiches and etzma nefesh. It's so nullified. And how much more so is all of existence from the perspective of the speaker, that God the speaker, that creating it all, b'dvar Hashem u'beruach piv. It's a whole other way of looking at the world, and a whole other way of looking at God. So it's not just we exist and we're fulfilling God's commands. All of existence is simply divine energy. That's concealed, as we're going to learn later. That's why there's the possibility for Avodah Zarah. That's why there's the possibility for ignoring the very essence of all of existence. And it's our job is to see through this concealment and reveal the divine. So therefore, Korav Elecha Dover Me'ed B'ficha B'vovcha L'Asesei. Of course, Korav Elecha. It's our reality. This is our very existence. It's like a person living their whole life following their own agenda. Then one day they find out, my whole being is a result. I'm a shliach of someone who's put me here. And every second of my life, every fiber of my existence is an expression of that. You come to realize that, it's a whole different picture. And we haven't even gotten to the next chapter, Chav Aleph, where he's going to talk about a whole other level of bittul. This is still a bittul that we're talking about dibur. The kelim are bottled, completely bottled to the Eir and to Elikus, using that language. But then we're going to come to understand that there's a whole other level, which is the next chapter, and we'll get to that in the next year. This is a revolutionary approach. Obviously, it's in the words Einaid Malvade, Einaid. You say V'yidaita Hayom v'shavesa levavecha ke'avayo lekim b'shamayim v'mal v'aretz mitachas Einaid. But the Alter Rebbe brings it out in this all profound way. Now you can understand this is not the way he began Tanya. He didn't begin with this point, even though it's so fundamental, because he's building up how we get there. So there's how we get there through our contemplation of, like he speaks in chapter 3 in Tanya, through Chabad. We contemplate Amamal Kalam, a Sefer Kalam, and a Kula Kamei Koloch Hashem. And later talks about Hamayach Shal Ta'alev, and that gives birth to Midas, the different levels we discussed of how Midas, whether it's Midas Galuyes, Begili Belev, or Betalumas Libe. That's all through our Aveda Mamat Lamaila. Then in Perikut Ches, he tells us that we have a neshama that has a Ava Mesoteres, and that Ava Mesoteres is always there. That it takes a challenge to reveal it. But when you really think about it, your very being, all of existence is really part of the divine reality, the divine unity. Then it's Korav Elecha Dover Me'ed B'ficha B'vavcha L'Asesei 24/7. We're just not aware of it, which we shall discuss. But it's a whole different take. They tell the anecdote. So two people, a Baal Nigla and a Baal Chassidus, were discussing, God wanted to destroy the universe, what would he do? So one said, the Baal Nigla, he brought all the rayos. He said, you do what we look in Chumash. So Parsha Noach brings a Mabul. And then later in Parsha Vayera, there's Daim, a fire, and Al Pi Halacha, Sreifa, Biur, is completely mevatel the Metzias. So basically, flood the world, God forbid. Burn it all, take the ashes, scatter them, and then it's like considered Al Pi Halacha as if it doesn't exist. Complete Biur. Comes the Chassid, who learned Perek Chaf in Tanya, and Perek Chaf Aleph, and then later Shayachid V'Amunah, and says, what would God do? He would do nothing. He just has to stop speaking. Just has to stop breathing. Dibur. Dvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu, B'ruach Piv Kol Tzvam. All he has to do is stop the Dibur and stop the Ruach Piv. As soon as he stops, it all stops being. This isn't just semantics. Say a similar story. There were two people arguing the existence of God. And again, one person is bringing rayos. One of them was a chassid. And when you have the discussions like this, especially if you bring in skeptical arguments, sometimes it's endless. And finally, the chassid who's exasperated says to the philosopher, he says to him, I envy you because you think about God all the time. To be very honest, I think about myself most of the time. Philosopher was very flattered. They part ways. Philosopher would go around proudly telling people, you see that great chassid, everyone respects him. He said he thinks about himself most of the time, and I think about God all the time. Until someone reminded him, or he got older and he reminded himself. It was actually an insult. You think about God all the time because you know you exist. So your question is, does God exist? And if yes, how and why? So you think about God all the time. You don't have to think about yourself. I know that God exists. That's a given. That's the reality. My thinking is, do I exist? And if yes, why? And what's my purpose? So I think about myself. Again, it's not semantics. It's a whole different way of looking at reality. In the language of Chassidus, Elokus b'pshitus, that God is a given. And Elam is bischachus, and existence is the novelty. But then, through the tzimtzum, hadishin, God inverted things. Think of the glove being turned inside out. So you think the glove is more important than the hand inside the glove. So we feel that Elokus, Elam is b'pshitus. Elam is existence is the given. And Elokus is bischachus. Elokus is the novelty. Our Aveda is to reverse that, get back to the reality. That is the hand inside the glove, and the glove is just the outer. That's why it's called klippa. Klippa means like a shell. A shell is fine, it protects the fruit, but if you imagine you replace the fruit with the shell, say the shell is more important than the fruit, or you don't even know there's a fruit. So these examples of these anecdotes are not exactly this, because here he's talking more the bittul of the dvarash, of the dibur. That which creates existence is so nullified compared to its source. So for sure that which it creates, the creation itself, is nullified. But it just comes and is leading us to come to understand how Achdus Hashem, divine unity, is the predominant and all-pervasive reality. And it's up to us to come to appreciate that. And when we do, then Kodev Elecha Dover Meid Befichel B'Lvavcha L'Asesei is just a natural reality. So this is a summation of Perek Chof, and we will the next year go into an introduction and then start learning Perek Chof Aleph, which continues this theme on an even deeper level. Everyone have a good tavach. TanyaApplied.com is where you can find this and all previous programs. Yehovchiyom Meil L'Sosn L'Simcha L'Meidim Tevim, and Eden everywhere, especially in Eretz Yisrael, should be protected. We should finally be zeicha in these days to the Gula Amitis Vashleim.
This has been My Life, Tanya Applied with Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Please join us again next week. Visit ChassidusApplied.com for archived classes and more resources.